Hello everybody, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Castle, and today I want to talk about the Game Awards. Since they are next week, next Thursday, I believe, there are some things I want to talk about. Firstly, what my pick for Game of the Year is, and secondly, the fact that Shadow of the Erd Tree got nominated for Game of the Year. So, yeah, that's I know a lot of people have already talked about that situation, but I just want to give my own thoughts on it because that's what these videos are supposed to be. It's supposed to be my thoughts on things that I'm a part of. And before we get into that, I'm going to talk about my game of the year. And that would be, hopefully, uh, what you're seeing right now, Metaphor ReFantazio. Now, if you don't know what Metaphor is, it's a JRPG made by Atlas, and Atlas are known for the Shin Megami games, the Persona games, and and it's a turn-based RPG where you are essentially trying to become the next king of the kingdom, and you go in with essentially nothing. Like you are supposed to be like the lowest of the low in this world society, and then you suddenly come out, say you're gonna be king, and you enter the competition to become king. And yeah, Metaphor is a really, really good game. It the story's great, the soundtrack is amazing, the characters, I absolutely loved the characters, and even though the combat was still like very Persona and very much your standard turn-based RPG, it is slightly different to how Atlas has made all their other games. So in previous games, with like Persona for example, your character, the protagonist, uh, they are able to swap out their abilities and their powers anytime they want during battle or during the course of the game. And all the other characters, they're just kind of stuck with what they got. In Metaphor, however, you are able to change your party members' classes and abilities into whatever you think would suit the situation you're in right now. And I I really liked that choice to like I can pick out the characters that I like the most, and I don't have to compromise on my attack power. Well, sort of, because they all have their individual stats, and certain classes are still better with certain people. But the point is, I can have anyone, regardless of what class they started with when they entered your party, I can have anyone be anything, and I can have them just as my normal fighting party and not feel like I'm getting too weak or anything. It's just great. Although there is one thing that prevents this game from being a 10 out of 10 for me. It may just be like me. I may have like leveled my the main character in a weird way. I may have like chosen the wrong classes for this section, but I spent 5 hours in the final dungeon, and it like you get no leeway for this final dungeon. Once you start it, you have to complete it. You cannot you're not given any grace period to like prepare, or if you do, it's very small. It's a very small grace period. It's been a while since I've beaten the game, but you barely get any grace period to level up your people, and then once you're in the dungeon, you can't leave, because if you leave, that's it. That's the end of everything. It's the end of the world, basically. And you go in this dungeon, everything is like 5 levels above you, and there are no like special rest areas where you can go and recover your health and mana or anything. And it's a huge dungeon. Like I said, it took me 5 hours to actually get through it, and the most of that time was actually actually due to the final boss, who I won't say because of spoilers, but I could not get through that final dungeon or that boss without having to go to storyteller mode, the easiest difficulty in the game. And even with that, I game overed 5 times in that boss fight. And by the way, in storyteller, when you get wiped in a fight, you are given an option to instantly revive at that point and come back and continue the fight from where you died. I had to do that like 4 or 5 times to get through that boss fight. And like I said, it could just be me not being that good at the game, not well optimizing my people or anything, but it just really seemed incredibly difficult and like virtually impossible to do on anything but storyteller. And I am slightly ashamed at that. I'm not gonna lie, but like I said, other than this one thing, the game is a 9 out of 10 for me, and probably my game of the year. Definitely my game of the year, actually. Definitely my game of the year. Now, let's talk about Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree. And just to sort of set where I feel about this, I don't think it should be nominated for Game of the Year. Yeah, I know. But it's simply because Shadow of the Erdtree is not a game. It is a DLC for a game. It is not a game in and of itself. You need base Elden Ring to access and even play the thing. So why does it get nominated for Game of the Year when it's not a standalone thing? If Shadow of the Erdtree was a standalone game, and as I saw someone say on Reddit the like last week when this whole thing got traction, they said this was slapped if they slapped Elden Ring 2 on it and put it out as its own thing, no one would be uh, uh, talking about this. I'm like, yeah, because then it would be its own game. It would be its own game, and you wouldn't need base Elden Ring to play it. But you need Elden Ring to play Shadow of the Erdtree. So it's DLC. It's not a game. So it shouldn't be Game of the Year. It's frustrating to see how people are trying to justify a DLC getting Game of the Year when it shouldn't get Game of the Year because it is not its own game. And there is something that I heard the other day on a Nextlander podcast where they said that the Game Awards have it set up where any game that came out any year is eligible to be Game of the Year because their their whole thing is it doesn't need to come out this year. It just needs to have done something substantial this year to get Game of the Year. And that could while that does sort of justify what they are doing with Shadow of the Erdtree, it doesn't line up with what previous Game of the Year awards have been. Previous Game of the Year awards, previous Game Awards, actually, other than like best ongoing game and best community support or whatever, other than those categories, everything else has had a game that has came out the year that Game Awards was shown. Every year, Game of the Year nominees have been games that came out that year. And this year, it is mostly no different, with the exception of the DLC for Elden Ring. And while I do think Shadow of the Erdtree does deserve nominations in all the other categories, I just don't think it should have been up for Game of the Year. And now, I know there is nothing I can do about it, but the only thing I can do is just vote in the community polls that have been going on. And yeah, it's nothing else I could really do other than just vent my frustrations about this. All right. I think I'm done. I think that's all I have to say on this. So, that was my game of the year and why I don't think Shadow of the Erdtree should have gotten a nomination. So, thank you everyone for listening. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, please leave a like and don't forget to subscribe. And I will see you next time. Goodbye.